Hello and welcome to the Genuine Learning Blog. My name is Melissa Galasso, and I'm very excited today to talk about a new invitation to comment coming out of the INPAG group, or the International Nonprofit Accounting Guidance. This is actually going to be our second or third blog on this topic. So IFR for NPO was really an exciting idea when they first started, and then they had an exposure draft 1, that we have already covered on the blog. But today we're going to talk about the second of the 3 exposure drafts that we are expecting in this area. So exposure draft number 2, or ITC, I guess technically number 2, is really a carrying forward for what we are already looking at. So back in January of 2021, there was a consultation paper that was done at looking at, should we use IFRS for SMEs as sort of the base here. And so they have taken that guidance and looking to see, okay, how can we make the first ever international financial reporting guidance for not-for-profit organizations. And so the goal of this is to really look at a global opportunity. For example, IFRS really doesn't have a lot of coverage for not-for-profit organizations. Obviously, US GAAP does have a whole section, 958, on the nonprofit, but there are lots of different countries that have their own GAAP that really don't address nonprofit accounting. And this leads to diversity in practice and also inconsistencies when we compare different groups. And so the goal of this group is to create a single reporting set of guidance that can be used worldwide for all organizations. And their goal is to do this by the middle of 2025, which is very exciting. And they said they were going to do it slowly, and they were going to be meticulous about it, and they were going to put it out in 3 different comment letters. And so we've already addressed the first one. And today we're going to look at the exposure draft number 2. And this is really focusing on accounting transactions. So previously it was sort of a high level, what is the foundation? What is the support? Who are the users? What is the purpose? Should we use IFRS for SMEs as the base? And now, with that in mind, they're saying, okay, well, how can we update and support? And so obviously they're leveraging IFRS for SMEs as their base, but what can we do to make it nonprofit specific, right? How can we propose changes? Like, for example, there's a whole section on share-based payment, but probably not super applicable to nonprofit organizations. So they wouldn't include it in the INPAG. In addition, they are either doing some terminology changes or some alignment in this area. And so they're putting out for exposure draft really the meat and potatoes side of the house of this, really looking at the accounting transactions that are fundamental to nonprofits. So obviously new terminology around grants and donations. They're introducing terms like enforceable grant agreement, or EGA, and enforceable grant obligation. And then if you're not going to be in that bucket, you're going to be in the other funding arrangement. And that's, again, any type of grant arrangement or donation being provided that does not contain this enforceable element of it. In the US, we would call these barriers, right, which create conditions. But again, they're using unique terminology here. And so they're providing this terminology here. They're helping understand which guidance to apply, exchange, non-exchange. They're talking about what is the revenue recognition for these EGOs and OFAs, and then addressing things like gifts in kind that's not really properly addressed fully in IFRS for SMEs, services in kind, and grant expense recognition. So they're taking and filling in for the nonprofits. But they're also proposing some adjustments for revenue from contracts with customers, right? So on the US side of the house, that would be topic 606 and our exchange transactions, and what are some changes they would make there, as well as inventory and foreign currency, right? So as we look to it. So they're taking all of the IFRS and kind of going through, and then they're addressing other things like, do we need share-based payment? Do we need profit sharing? And removing those. And then for some, they're saying, is it okay to go with what we have, right? Hyperinflation, is the stuff that's already in there for IFRS for SMEs going to work? Borrowing costs, income taxes, is that applicable to nonprofits? Is there any changes that we would want to make? And so they're posing questions about how to handle this. And again, this has been out for some time. We've wanted to get it onto the blog, but there's been such a flurry of activity that we haven't gotten to it yet. But we knew that it had a really long comment letter period. So comments aren't due until March 15th of 2024. And so we wanted to give you the opportunity to respond because we do think it's really important. They would love to hear from practitioners and users as well as obviously preparers in order to get your feedback. And you have two ways. You can either do it via email or there's an online ifrfornpo.org/have-your-say that you can comment and provide feedback for them to take into consideration, and they would love to hear you. As I said, we're not really expecting a final product till mid-2025. We still have a whole nother exposure draft that's going to come out after this on fund accounting, classification of expenses, fundraising, and obviously transition if you're currently using a GAAP or an other comprehensive basis of accounting or special purpose framework. Obviously, they still have to talk about that transition. But in the meantime, it's a pretty exciting time to be here for not-for-profits, especially worldwide nonprofits. This summer, I had the opportunity to talk I was in Copenhagen, which was very exciting. But I talked to a truly worldwide organization, nonprofit organization that had people from all over the world there. And it was so phenomenal. They were translating my speech into multiple language, and they translated my slides into multiple language in order to be able to do this. And it's truly global. And we have these organizations that want truly global standards. And so I talked a little bit about their first exposure draft during that. And obviously they had a keen interest in learning more. So I think this is going to be really exciting for those worldwide opportunities. So I do encourage you to participate. It is an opportunity to really have a big difference in the way nonprofits all around the world are impacted by financial reporting standards. So that is a wrap on this week's blog. Hopefully, if you work with not-for-profits or you work at a not-for-profit, this may be of interest to you. So hopefully we can get you to give them some feedback. But other than that, that's a wrap. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you on a future blog. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.